Well, hello, scholars. It's me again. So I do not have my background, but it's okay because I'm still going to be able to go through this material, and hopefully you'll be able to recall some of the information that I go through. After I talk about this stuff, you guys can read through the chapter. If you have any questions after you've read through the chapter and you've watched the videos, please feel free at any time to reach out to me. Send me an email, shoot me a text message. I did notice that quite a few of you guys sent me emails during the time that I was locked out of the system. And I just want to let you guys know that I do apologize for that. There really wasn't much of anything that I could have done to keep myself from getting locked out of the system. And once I realized I was locked out of the system, it was very difficult for me to get in contact with someone in IT since I can only call and email. I can't stop by the office. So they eventually did call me back after I left a few voice messages, and we were able to get back in the system. And I do apologize for that. But now that we're back in the system, I think we're back rolling in the right direction. You guys should definitely try out Flipgrid to do your discussion post this week. Try, submitting your initial post, and then try to respond to other videos with a video. We would love to see you and get to know what your voice sounds like and give you an opportunity to practice recording yourself for the class in the class platform. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to mention is that seems I have lost what I wanted to mention. Hopefully I think about it before the end of this video and I will let you guys know. So as usual, I am going to share my screen. Ooh, yeah. And our second chapter for the week is chapter 12. Chapter 12 is all about delivering your speech. So there are various types of delivery styles, things that you can do in terms of preparation and presentation that vary based on what your preference is, what the occasion is, and what access you have regarding information and time and all of that. So one of the ways that we can present a message is impromptu. This is a type of speaking in which the speaker has little or no time to prepare a speech. Oftentimes in public speaking classes, you will be granted a small amount of time to prepare for an impromptu presentation. Some people call these crisis presentations, where you might have 24 hours to put together a brief speech. Sometimes you don't get that much time. You might be told to pull a topic from a hat and immediately start talking about that topic. But in those cases, the topic is something that you're more than likely extremely well versed in. For instance, you might be given a topic like what things you could do with your major once you've graduated, or what's your favorite childhood memory, or anything like that. That's something that you could definitely speak on immediately because it's something personal to your life and your experiences. So I will say that this may happen outside of an academic environment. For instance, if you were on a job and your supervisor sent out minutes or sent out an email about a new project that we're doing or that the organization would be doing, and your supervisor wanted you to brief the group regarding those new changes, that would be an example of impromptu, where you don't have a lot of time to prepare as an official presentation, a formal presentation, but you have the information, you know what you're talking about, and you just speak directly from your general knowledge regarding the topic. Extemporaneous speaking, which is my favorite style of speaking, and it's the speaking style that I recommend for presentations in this class, is a type of public speaking in which the speaker researches, organizes, rehearses, and delivers a speech in a way that combines both structure and spontaneity. Now, when I say that, I mean that you have an idea of exactly what you want to talk about and exactly what things you're going to incorporate as supporting material throughout your presentation. So you know the definitions, you know the examples, you know the illustrations or narratives or anecdotes. You have access to all of these things. Those are things that you have talked about in preparation for your presentation. And you probably have a well-structured preparation outline that has your full introduction, maybe some main points with some bullet points for things that you're going to talk about under those main points, and some transitional statements. But you don't go so far as to write down every single sentence verbatim that you anticipate saying during your presentation. This allows you to have the credibility of being prepared, but it also allows you to have a conversational tone, because during your presentation, you'll be speaking in a way that indicates that you're not reading from a script, but that you're talking about something that you care about and that you're knowledgeable about. Now, manuscript speaking is the opposite of that. Well, not the complete opposite, because you do prepare for extemporaneous presentation. But the way that it comes off, in most cases, is scripted, and it doesn't really lend itself, in my opinion, to you being authentic or expressive or unique in the way that you're presenting the information. Most people, or at least students that I've seen present manuscript speeches, it's very obvious that they're presenting a manuscript speech, and it's almost like they're reading an audiobook or something. And I don't necessarily prefer that way, but I do recognize that there are times in which manuscript speaking is ideal. For instance, if you're doing a PR address, that would be ideal to have a manuscript speech, to have exactly what you're going to say predetermined. Also, you'll note that most politicians have manuscript speeches. So whenever you were to hear President Obama, for instance, speak on a topic, he would often be speaking from teleprompters with a very detailed message that he did not want to deviate from, because the risk of deviating from that message and saying something that maybe wasn't appropriate or maybe didn't match up to what he had discussed with his speechwriters, that might have caused some issues in terms of his image. So it's very important that he have his presentation scripted and presented in a way that was definitive and that did not change very much. Oh, that's so weird. It looks like it looks like my background is popped back up, and it's messing things up because I don't have the green screen, but it's like it's making me disappear. But I guess it doesn't matter. We're going to keep going. So what would you look at this slide? It doesn't even have the definition, but that's fine. The memorized speaking is a presentation during which you have memorized an entire manuscript verbatim. So there was a manuscript, but you're not reading from that manuscript. You're not even referencing that manuscript during your presentation, as you have gone through the process of memorizing the entire presentation verbatim. This is very common for drama and spoken word. Poets oftentimes memorize their poems. So this is a style that you'll see a lot of in art in particular. Also, I'll mention that a declamation presentation, a declamation speech, is a presentation of an already famous address. So if you were to recite the I Have a Dream speech or the Gettysburg Address, that would be declamation. And oftentimes, declamation presentations are memorized. So when we talk about presentations and when we assess presentations, I will, and most of you probably tend to, even if you don't think about it, we assess while considering the 3 V's. We assess the verbal, the vocal, and the visual aspects of the presentation. So the verbal aspect is the use of words. Verbal stems from the term verbis, which means to use words, and that's written word and spoken word, also known as oral communication. The vocal aspect is the way that we hear the words that are being spoken if we're talking about oral communication. So the pitch, the rate, the tone, the volume, the emphasis, articulation, all of those things go into the vocal aspect of the message. Visual aspect, that's facial expressions, posture, gestures, movement, personal appearance, all of those things. So all of those things are things that we note and we may criticize or critique during presentations. So I said that to say that the next few terms that we're going to go over are based on the vocal aspect of the message. So the first is volume, and volume is the loudness of a speaker's voice. How loud or how, I guess, soft or quiet an individual is when they're doing their presentation. And for most cases, if you're doing a speech, you want to project your voice as best you possibly can without overwhelming your audience. You do not want to shout or yell. And I have heard public speakers who do yell during presentations at certain points to emphasize their passion. And some people think it's passionate and it gets them encouraged and it makes them feel good about the passion of the speaker. And some people really just dislike very loud, overwhelming speakers. So you have to know your audience to know what's going to be okay during a presentation. But what is ideal is that you're loud enough for the individuals in the back of the room to hear you. If at any point you're not loud enough where everyone can hear you clearly, then you're not being an effective presenter. Pitch is the highness or lowness of a speaker's voice. So this is whether or not you're using your upper register or your lower register. Your lower register is like your chest voice. So if you were to speak like this, then that would be a lower register. And if you were to speak like this, it would be an upper register. So that's a variation in pitch. And typically you want to speak with your natural voice, whatever naturally flows and feels good while you're speaking. But I will say that it's very important that you vary pitch throughout your presentation. So you're not always nasally, you're not always super low, you're not always right in the middle monotone, but there are variations that match what you're saying and the feeling you want to accompany those words. It's also important that I mention that some occasions require that you vary your pitch in different ways. For instance, traditionally, if you wanted to be a broadcast journalist, they would recommend that you had a lower register, that you spoke with a lower register, because it was considered to be the voice of an authority. An authority figure would speak in their lower register. So anytime you were to work in journalism, just like Oprah Winfrey, just like Barbara Walters, even though they were female, they always spoke in their lower register because it was acceptable for that particular field. So that's something that you might want to consider also. Dialect is the vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation used by a specific group of people, such as an ethnic or regional group. So in the South, many people say that our dialect is quite different because we say things like y'all, and we oftentimes clump words together to shorten the amount that we have to say. That's very common in the South. Whereas up north, rather than saying y'all, they might say you guys or you all. So that's an example of difference in dialect. Additionally, there are so many slang terminologies that play into dialect. When we mention vocabulary in particular, there are words that we use in Mississippi and Georgia and Alabama and South and North Carolina that some people from California or New York or Maryland might not even know what that word means. So when we talk about dialect, we're talking about all those facets of language that may vary across regional or ethnic groups. When I say ethnic groups, I wouldn't suggest that Black people have a completely different set of words or way of saying words compared to white people. But a better example might be Creoles. So we do know that dialect for Creoles, the way that they say the words that they say in some of the terminologies with the mixture of French in their common group of words that they say, that would definitely be an example of dialect shifts across ethnic groups. Now, rate is the speech at which a speaker speaks, how fast or how slow an individual talks. And I'm not sure I need to do much of an explanation about rate. It's just how fast or slow that you speak. Vocal variety is the changes in the volume, rate, and pitch of a speaker's voice that affects the meaning of the words delivered. So I also feel like I need to mention that another word for all volume, pitch, rate, all of these things that contribute to vocal variety is paralanguage. And paralanguage involves those nonverbal factors that can change or reinforce the meaning of what's being said. So an example of it changing the meaning of what's being said is being sarcastic, or for instance, if you were to make your significant other angry and you say something like, I didn't even think it was a big deal. Why are you so angry? And they say, I'm not even mad. And they rock their head a little bit and they change their tone. They're saying they're not angry. However, their nonverbals or their paralanguage would suggest that they actually are. Additionally, another example might be if you were to whisper something. If you were to whisper something, the way that you present the message without even saying that it's a secret or without even saying that you don't want other people to know what you're saying, just the whisper implies or adds to the message that this is a secret. I don't want other people to hear me. I don't want other people to know what I'm saying. So I touched on monotone earlier, and basically monotone is a flat pitch, not altering your pitch throughout your presentation, and that is definitely not desirable. Vocalized pauses. These are items that most people struggle with. You know what I'm saying? And anything that can be presented as a way to buy more time to think about what you want to say next is considered a vocalized pause. Articulation, the physical process of producing specific speech sounds to make language intelligible. So articulation involves the process of using your full voice and mouth, and sometimes even your body, to ensure that what you are saying is clearly presented. When you mumble, you're not being articulate. When you sometimes even if you don't have your body in a good position, maybe if you're laying down, it's hard for you to clearly articulate because of just the way that your body is placed and your inability to use the full range of your person to produce the sound that's necessary to complete the entire word. So if you're attempting to be articulate, it's important that you use your full mouth, your lips, your tongue. Some words you can't say without making sure that you use your full mouth. There's this game, I believe, that some people play where they put something in their mouth and they have to try to articulate, which is very difficult to do. So that kind of paints a picture of what I mean when I say articulate. Articulating means that you're using the full range of your person to completely express the sounds associated with a particular word. Now, pronunciation is different in that you're making the appropriate sounds based on the letters that are included in the word. So you're using the appropriate consonant sound and the appropriate vowel sounds. We know that vowel sounds are ah, eh, e, o, u, and those things should be clearly articulated, clearly expressed during pronunciation of words. Posture. Posture is the way speakers position and carry their bodies. So it's whether or not you're slumped or you're sitting erect with your shoulders rolled back and your chin up, chest up. All of that contributes to positive posture. And posture not impacts impacts your sound, the sound of your voice, but it also impacts your credibility. If you seem too lackadaisical, if you seem like you're not interested in producing the message and presenting the message, then some people might not even be interested in hearing what you have to say. Nonverbal messages include information that is not communicated with words, but rather through movement, with gestures, facial expressions, vocal variety, use of time, use of space, and touch. Now, another name for this is meta communication. Meta communication involves all of those nonverbal factors that may impact your message. I also feel like I want to mention that facial expressions come with at least 6 different well-known varieties. The 6 different well-known varieties illustrate emotions. Those emotions are anger, fear, happiness, sadness, surprise, and disgust. Okay, so when you're preparing, we talked earlier about having extemporaneous presentations and making sure that you do your research, that you prepare, that you practice, all of that. When you're doing this, you use what's called a speaking outline. Now, when you're doing this, you use what's called a preparation outline. Now, when you actually do your presentation in extemporaneous style, you have what's called a speaking outline or cue cards. Exactly what goes on a cue card would go on a speaking outline. And this is just words and short phrases that remind you or cue you to the next thing that needs to be said. And on these cue cards, you would have keywords. For instance, if I wanted to talk about interpersonal communication, let me try that. I guess I should have had this already put together, but it doesn't hurt to do some impromptu changes. Okay, so interpersonal communication, my major words would be relational exchange, dyadic, small group. If I wanted to add family, profession, school. So, oh, you can't really see that. Okay, so I have a sheet of paper, and on this piece of paper, I have relational exchange, dyadic, small group, family, profession, and school. Those are all the words that I have. If my speech was about interpersonal communication, I could easily think about, okay, my first word is relational exchange. What is interpersonal communication? Interpersonal communication is a relational exchange between two or more individuals. I would thereafter explain what a relational exchange is. I would explain that a relationship is determined by what's called interdependence, or a mutual need between individuals. This interdependence creates what's called a continuum of continuum within the relationship that dictates the breadth and depth of communication. Talk about that a little bit, and then I would shift to dyadic. So there are two different types of interpersonal communication. Dyadic, which is one-on-one, and small group, which is 3 to 9 individuals. There are various times when you might want to interact in a small group. In your family, to achieve goals, to save money, to plan trips, so on and so forth. In your profession, on committees, to plan organizational change, blah, 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 blah. At your school, when you have group projects for various classes, so on and so forth. So as you can see from that demonstration, even though it might not have been the best demonstration, you can use short words or phrases to remind you of things that you already know, that you know you can talk about at length without having a script. And those key words help you when you have a speaking outline or cue cards that you're using for your presentation. All right, so that's everything that I have for you guys for chapter 12. As always, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. If it's something that you need help with immediately, feel free to give me a call or shoot me a text. My number is 601-270-2207. Oh, I hate that. Have a great weekend.